You've entered BOOKSTORM with Kristen Civiletto and me, Chris Storm. This is a podcast devoted to best-selling books that matter, books that make a difference. We're diving down deep with beloved authors about their stories. We're exposing hot-button topics and heartfelt themes, the issues that affect each of us in our own lives, as siblings, parents, partners, friends, as human beings. We're braving new ideas, fresh thoughts, hard lessons, and important truths. Those kinds of things that stay with us long after we turn the last page and close the book. Welcome back to BOOKSTORM Podcast, book lovers and lovers of great fiction. We have something very special for you here today. Kristen and I were thrilled to receive the advanced reader's copy for James Rollins' newest novel, Tides of Fire. It is going to air the same day that you will be hearing this podcast, Tuesday, August 15th, and you are going to love it. Welcome, James, BOOKSTORM.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
We're happy to have you here. And before we get started, we like to tell a little bit of your bio, because I know you've got a lot of reader fans out there, but there may be a few little things they don't know, because you certainly have worked hard to attain the success that you have in writing. And so I want to say, you probably do know that James Rollins is the #1 New York Times best-selling author of international thrillers. They've been translated into more than 40 languages and sold more than 20 million copies. Wow. The New York Times says, and I'm going to quote, "Rollins is what you might wind up with if you tossed Michael Crichton and Dan Brown into a particle accelerator together." We like that one. NPR calls his work adventurous and enormously engrossing. And Rollins unveils unseen worlds. That's what Kristen and I love. Scientific breakthroughs, historical secrets matched with stunning suspense. This is what makes great fiction. He also is a veterinarian. He had a practice in Sacramento for over a decade, and he still volunteers at local shelters. Rollins shares his home up in Sierra Nevada mountains with 2 golden retrievers, Echo and Duncan. Too bad we don't see them in the background. They must be in a safe location.
They are downstairs.
Yeah. Now, this, I just have to say, then I read this on Amazon. You are an amateur spelunker and a certified scuba enthusiast, that we will often find you either underground or underwater. And I had to look up spelunker. It's a video game. Right?
It basically just means cave exploring.
Cave exploring. The actual definition, one who makes a hobby of exploring caves. That's pretty cool. So, and last but not least, very important, I have to thank you, because James is the founder of Authors United, a group of best-selling authors dedicated to raising funds and awareness for a nonprofit called USA Cares. Now, what they do is they seek to help soldiers and their families. And their mission is simple: restore financial stability and self-sufficiency while instilling a renewed sense of hope among the brave men and women who have put their lives on the line for our freedom. Thank you for giving back. That's important.
Happy to do so. I'm now moved on to US for Warriors. It's a grassroots effort out of San Diego. They're growing by leaps and bounds. They're doing something similar, but they have one track that particularly intrigues me, is that we're mentoring veterans on how to tell their stories, not just necessarily for a book, but maybe they're just for a journal for their family, something they can share and pass down. In the fogs of war, many details are lost. And if we can get those stories down on paper, whether they're going to be shared privately or shared with the public, I think it's a great resource. So being as an author, it's a great deal of fun to be able to, get these stories told and preserved.
that I never realized that just how important that was until they started collecting those same stories from Holocaust survivors. And
Sure.
they could actually be placed in a museum as little mini video clips. Very important effort. Thank you for that too. So happy to have you here today.
Thank you.
Well, Jim, we're here to talk about Tides of Fire, which, as Chris mentioned, we absolutely loved this book. We've been talking about it actually for quite a while. And I like to give our listeners some of the factual background just to kind of give them an idea of what the book is about, but without giving away any spoilers, which is kind of hard in this story. And if you want to add anything at the end, we would love to hear what you had to say. But this story in Tides of Fire, we start out and we learn about the Titan Project. This is an international research station off the coast of Australia in the Coral Sea. And they are exploring a thriving zone of life. They find these strange bioluminescent corals that defy science. They're intrigued by these. They want to know more. What promise could they hold for the future? But soon, the loss of a military submarine in the area triggers and sets in motion a geological disaster that starts to destabilize the entire region. We have massive earthquakes, we have volcanic eruptions, we have deadly tsunamis, and they're hinting at even a greater cataclysm to come. Now, in the midst of all of this chaos, they're starting to notice some unusual things below the water, and it's starting to not make a lot of sense to a lot of scientists. So as the seas turn toxic and as these coastlines are on fire, this is where Sigma comes in. And this is a continuation of some of your prior novels. And here we have the commander, Grayson, who is really at this point now trying to not only figure out what's going on, but also figure out a way to stop this coming cataclysm. He has a team of people, a team of scientists, but also a team of people who are protecting us in many different ways. And it takes all of them at their best to bring about the end result of this incredible story. Now, we do meet a lot of people in this story, which was kind of cool. And you delved into not only their origin stories, but possibly even our origin story. So the secrets in this book were on so many levels, fascinating, thrilling, and I would love it if you wanted to add anything more to that backdrop.
Yeah, I mean, I get that question asked a lot about where do you get your ideas from? It's the question that all authors hate to hear, by the way, because we're afraid if you make us look too closely at that process, it's going to evaporate and go away. And we don't want that to happen. If you look right over here, I've got the set of little shelves right over here. I call that my idea box. It used to be a cardboard box, but I collect a bunch of different ideas, and I'm not basically in an organized fashion. I look for historical mystery, something that ends in a question mark. In this book, we're exploring Aboriginal mythology. We're looking at the history of the turn of the century exploration of Southeast Asia. I just collect these facts, but I'm also looking for weird science, science that makes me go, what if, where's that headed? How's that going to challenge us? In this case, I'm very intrigued by the health of the ocean, the way it can affect us in the future, the way it's affecting us now. So that became a sort of a folder within that larger collection of ideas. And after a while, I began trying to find ways of merging them together. What science matches with what history? Can I begin building a story? Then I look for weird tech. I learned about this ocean-going research vessel, this giga yacht, as they call it, called the Earth 300. It's going to be basically plying the seas probably in the next year or two. And it's a cool ship. It's got this big sort of I think it's 13-story. I can't remember my details. Like a 13-story scientific city, this globe of glass that sits in the stern of the boat. So I thought, oh, that's going to be fun. I'm going to rename that the Titan X, make it a part of this Titan Research Center, and I'm going to, create quite a bit of mischief with it. So again, it's just fun, cobbling together these ideas, and I'm entertained by it. Hopefully, the readership will too.
Oh, absolutely. And that's a great word, entertain, because you brought all of these ideas and facts and very thought-provoking questions that, appeal to kind of a nerd like us. But it was also entertaining and thrilling and exciting on many levels. So if you're ready to brave the storm, I think Chris is going to kick us off.
Yeah, I loved it because, as you said, James, there's fantasy and fantastic things happening in this novel, but there's also truth. And you take a little truth and then you throw in some what ifs, and we get something that we just sit back and say, wow. So you did something quite wonderful. You showed the reader that our world is far more complex and expansive than simply what our senses detect. The power found in both micro and the macro of the universe and the earth. You reminded the reader that much of our oceans remain unexplored. I'm going to take a quote from your book. We've only crudely mapped about 20% of the ocean floor. As to what is down there, no one can truly say. There are wonderful oases that thrive in the sunless deep. Wow. Your character, Phoebe, she was one of my favorite because she was willing to consider those things she could not explain. Mankind's battle with himself in your story, the war between mankind, seems so small compared to these bigger events. And I had to ask you, as the writer, in your opinion, will it be those not yet discovered things, the microscopic or the gargantuan objects from space, that will pose the greatest threat to us, or maybe be our greatest help?
I'm seldom an absolutionist. I have a tendency to look for that gray area between extremes, because that's the way life is. You mentioned the word complex, and that is what life is. Life is not just big events and small events. It's a merging of those two together. When it comes to threats, let's take COVID, for example. Here we start with this tiny virus, this unseen, yet it has these huge consequences. It escalates rapidly. We end up with a global shutdown. We end up with economic crises. We end up with political strife. So though the inciting agent, the seed, might be small, it grows rapidly. And the converse, I talk about a little bit climate change in this book. We talk about the ocean health, and that sounds like a global phenomenon, but the effects are minute. The most dangerous, the most catastrophic effects of climate change aren't the hurricanes. It's not the wildfires. It's what it's doing at the microscopic level. We're seeing ocean temperatures change, which affects the coral, but it also affects plankton. Again, these little phytoorganisms out there. And they're dying in great numbers. And if they die enough, the whole world's going to be threatened because they're a major absorption of carbon. And the major, the key to the whole chain of sea life. And, going back, if it affects the carbon, then that just makes climate change worse. So it cycles back up again to a global phenomenon. So it's hard to basically say macro, micro, either or. I think that's a bit of a trap. I think it's a recipe for disaster. I prefer, if you're going to look at benefits or threats, take a holistic approach. I think that's the better way of getting a handle on those threats, or taking advantage of a benefit.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's an excellent answer. I have to add that what you just brought up really was astounding and fascinating in this book. The chain effects of nature upon itself. The moon to the volcano, to the earthquake, to the tsunami, to the black air. And it made the reader sit back and realize the delicacy of the entire earth. You really did a lot of research on this, and thank you for that.
Yeah, I try not to. I'm always concerned that I get excited about these topics, that I want to share everything with the readership, but not everybody is as much of a nerd as me. So I have to sort of juggle, how much information do I want to give you? How much, I'll keep the roller coaster rolling. So at the end of my book, I have a what's true, what's not section, where I sort of pull apart the curtain and I say, hey, this is where this information came from. This is what was my imagination. If there are any, topics that are interest of you, here's some resources you can follow. It's nice to get a compliment from a reader saying, hey, I really enjoyed that story. It was really cool. But to me, the better compliment is someone might go, oh, Jim, I closed that book, but I was really interested in that topic you mentioned here, and I did further research. It was really fascinating. To me, that I know the book worked more than just at the popcorn level of entertainment, that, it had some deeper resonance. And to me, that's, what I try to achieve with my novels is trying not to become didactic, become a teacher. I don't want to have my book feel like a lesson plan. I want it to be entertaining at the same time, maybe inform people about some details of the world from the micro or macro level that might be even, intriguing to them too.
And you did just that. Yeah, you did. Thank you.
Well, we've talked a little bit about, plate tectonics and life forms and these origin stories, but there was also another aspect of the book that you alluded to that I thought was really cool, and that was the technology. I was really struck by the juxtaposition of the ancient life versus technology. We had the might of these drones and autonomous forces, which that in itself is very thought-provoking. But we also had the power and the majesty of the natural world on full display. And I wanted to ask you, do you think that we're living in a time where humans can harness maybe both for their needs? Or are both of those things or either of those things too much for us?
Technology changes rapidly. And there's a little dictum of technology called Moore's Law. Basically states that, the transistors are going to double the number that can be fitted on a microchip every 2 years. Well, we blew that benchmark away. First, initially, we were following that dictum, but now, it's just long gone. We escalate much faster than that. And why? Mostly because of AI. AI is in the news quite a bit right now. But where AI really showed its leap in technology was not from coding, but from the natural world. It was these scientists looking at the natural world to understand how our brains function. They were mapping synapses. They were, recording neural pathways, trying to figure out how do we think? Where does our consciousness come from? And it was that research that really escalated and pushed AI into its next sort of iteration. And we're seeing that advance very rapidly even now. Even we're seeing, AI studying books to be able to have Chat GPT be able to do, take my job away, which hopefully will never happen. So I like the fact that we're using the natural world as a model for scientific advancement. And it's not new. For years, drug companies have been scouring the Amazon forest, where chemical warfare is going on between competition between plants and insects. And so that they're mining these pharmaceuticals out of the natural world that then become, cancer-saving drugs for us. Flip side, we're seeing tech improving biology. In this book, I have a character named Monk who has a synthetic hand, a prosthetic. And so I've been following DARPA's technology and what they're doing for the advancement of improving prosthetics. And, they're getting to the point where they're developing artificial skin that can feel the difference between hot and cold. They're improving fine motor developments. There's wireless implants that are allowing people to remotely control their limbs just by thought. So I like the fact that we're using the natural world as a model for scientific advancement and vice versa. To me, I think that's one of the most exciting areas of research is seeing how science and the natural world merge to produce some amazing, sometimes frightening technology.
Yeah. And I think some of that fear comes from the fact that we also have to control, or we want to control and seek to control both of those things, whether it's the natural world or this technology. And the unknowns about that, I think, cause a lot of anxiety for people.
Yeah, I mean, it's again, I'm a thriller writer, so I'm always looking for those things that do spark anxiety. So if there's something, and again, if you read, I think a lot of my books are my attempts to calm my nerves. I find these scary things. I don't know how to deal with them, so I write about them. And Sigma Force comes in and solves them for me. So to me, if I can find at least some type of solution, even if it's fictional, maybe it's something that we're going to learn down the line, I feel a little bit better.
I like that. That's exactly what we love about all these books. And let's dive a little deeper into anxiety, the macro universe, extraterrestrial life forms. We've seen the films over the years, spherical spacecraft that hover, little green men, but you expose the reader to something far more possible and probable. Life comes in all shapes and forms, as we can see on this earth. So why not elsewhere? It really made us think. And without giving any spoilers, Can you expand a little upon your research of this topic? Because I feel that this clearly has fascinated you as the writer, and honestly, all of us forever.
Well, I guess I should
UFO.
probably put my tinfoil hat on. Let me grab that. I got that somewhere around here. To be honest, I've always been a little bit of a skeptic about UFOs, or as they're now reclassified, UAPs, unidentified aerial phenomenon. Tomato. It's a UFO. Come on, I don't know. It sounds more scientific if you say UAP. Even when I was writing the book, I kept putting UAP because I put UFO. There's such a negative stigma associated with that, so I lean towards UAPs. The impetus for the story, as I mentioned, I showed you my idea box over there. It grew slowly with my suspicions. I'm accumulating all this data, and I kept finding these files, these reports about these declassification of all of this information, and it seems to be just a tumult. It just keeps coming and coming. The CIA declassified 3,000 pages of a file they call the Black Vault. Sounds scary enough right there. The Pentagon released reports about 144 UAPs that were reported by the military, and all of them are unknown origin. The Pentagon can't explain any of them except for one, which was a deflated balloon. Even the Pentagon said this weird agency, well, I shouldn't say weird, they define the agency as, we're going to detect and identify unidentifiable phenomenon. And they call this group, remember, I get this right, the Airborne Object Identification and Management Synchronization Group. Now that's a Pentagon name right there, right? As long as that is, it must be important. It must be significant. And then we have just last week or a week or two ago, the Air Force officer David Grush was testified before Congress saying that, or claiming that, non-human biologics have been discovered at crash sites. And, I'm wondering how much of this is true? What can I believe? What can't I? But what was back of my mind was like, why now? Why are they suddenly declassifying all this? Why is this information becoming so public? Is someone out there preparing us for something? Are they taking us, step by step by the hand, leading us to something that's going to be a larger reveal down the line? So, as you might imagine, after writing, I think this is my 14th Sigma Force book, which features Sigma Force, for those who don't know, is a group that has been the former Special Forces agents that have been retrained by DARPA, the Defense Department's Research and Development Agency, to become basically field agents. They're scientists with guns, for lack of a better term. But as a consequence, I've got a lot of contacts with DARPA because I got a lot of DARPA members of DARPA that are fans, scientists, people in the field. And so I contacted them, and I had some contacts in the Pentagon. It's like, what's going on, guys? Why now? How much of this is real? Now, they've generally been fairly, strangely, honest with me about a lot of stuff. I mean, a lot of stuff in my books, people have gone like, where did you learn that? Some of them from sources that are like clearly questioning, is someone leaking classified information to you, Jim? But in this case, they were very cagey. They weren't denying, but they weren't, confirming. They were evasive, which to me says there's something going on behind that. Now, again, I mentioned before, calm myself down. I better write about it. I better find a solution because, I can extrapolate in my books. I can and try to search for answers. I can look at my idea file, try to piece things together and try to answer that. So try to calm that nerve down.
It was amazing. And I did love all of the facts that you had in the book and what you had at the end of the book too, the pages with chapter by chapter. I went through each one of those and found it incredible wealth of information. Thank you for making an entertaining novel that was real, had a lot of real life things in it. Thank you.
Jim, I want to talk about something kind of related to what you were just talking about. You broached the idea that perhaps human and animal life are far older than what we think. And people are increasingly believing this, that, contrary to what we understand about modern history, maybe there was an advanced civilization or civilizations that existed before a cataclysmic event. Do you think your characters are looking to the secrets of the ocean and the deep, deep sea to help uncover knowledge about what maybe transpired before? What do you think?
Again, when it comes to origin stories, the science, again, a lot of scientists will talk to me. They will tell me things that I'm shocked they were telling me. And I like to talk to the scientists, by the way, because I need my science to be as current as possible. Because the writing a book takes a while, researching the book takes a while. When I finally turn my manuscript in, it takes about a year before it gets published. So science can change very rapidly. And my secret fear is I'm going to put something in a book that's going to be proven wrong before the book comes out. So to try to avoid that, try to make the information current and feel topical, I like talking to them. Tell me not what you're writing in that next, book or journal article that's going to be months, if not years old. Look behind your shoulder. Tell me what's on your work table right now. I need that immediacy. So to me, I was finding out that as much as scientists seem to say this is the way it is, they keep changing that. They keep moving that bar. When did life first begin? In this book, we talk about the history of the Aborigines. When did they first arrive in Australia? That date keeps getting shifted further and further back. And so to me, when it comes to the searching of origin of life, I became more and more convinced that we should be looking at the ocean rather than the surface. The earliest components of life are being spewed out by these hot vents at the bottom of the ocean. They're rich in nutrients, they have strange chemicals, they're powered by intense heat. They're basically like a forge for creating life. In my book, there's a scientist, Daytuck. He's basically a planetary scientist looking for life on other planets. And he makes a comment that I think is significant. He's saying that the greater chance of finding life on a foreign planet, on a exoplanet, is not to look on the surface, where there are constant changes that are going to be bombarding that surface. The surface is an area of fluctuation. You've got meteoric impacts, you've got radiation, you have solar flares. It's constantly changing. It's hard for life to get a foothold when it keeps sliding out from underneath you. But where you're more likely to find life is down deep, what he calls slow life, the life that's buried deep, where it's insulated, protected. And that's the same true on our planet. We have a great insulator, the ocean. We have a source of producing the components of life, those deep sea vents. So again, we also mentioned at the beginning of this talk and in my book that a very small fraction of the ocean has been explored, not just 20%. 20% has been what they call modernly mapped. But to really get down to the minutia, to get down to the level of even being able to detect a plane wreck, like no one's ever found that Malaysian plane. To be able to actually get that find of a detail of the ocean floor, only 0.05% of the Earth has been of this ocean floor has been studied. So that's, basically almost 99+% of the ocean has remained unexplored. So if we're really looking to look for the origin of life on the planet, we should be looking at that deep, dark womb of the ocean. Because I think that's our best chance to basically find, not only the history of life, but, basically the origin of life on other planets.
Yeah. Your story kept making me think in terms of humility. Because for too long, I think we think we're the pinnacle of civilization. We're the highest creation. And the more we learn, the more we're realizing we really don't know a lot. So I loved what you said, because it really just, highlights that aspect.
Hope we're not at the pinnacle of our civilization. If so, we're not dreaming big enough.
Yeah.
I hope we have much further to go, if we don't destroy ourselves before that happens.
Well, I now can't wait to see what we discover. Let's get down to the ocean and make these discoveries, and let's see what else is coming from the universe. And it makes everything so possible. And everyone, readers, you're just going to love this book. You got to pick it up by James Rollins, Tides of Fire, everything we've talked about here today and more. Not only is it informational, it's super entertaining and fun. It's a great book. Now, before we let you go, you've got to give us a glimpse of what you're working on next.
The next Sigma novel is called Archangel, and it's a story about the exploration of for a lost continent. And that's all I'm going to tell you.
That sounds wonderful. So for everyone who's listening, please connect with James Rollins. You can find him on his website, jamesrollins.com/books. He's on Facebook, Twitter, X, Instagram, YouTube, Pinterest. You're everywhere. But you know what? We're especially glad you're here with BOOKSTORM today. It's been a lot of fun talking to you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the deep dive into the core of this book. I appreciate it. Usually I get a lot of podcasts that are glossy and on the surface. So it's nice being able to, again, I'm a nerd. The fact that you're singing my tune right here.
We're a couple. I think we're a couple of nerds here, Kristen and I too. And thank you for saying that. It means a lot to us. We get so many comments that the questions here are so much more substantial and meaningful. And we vet every book before we choose it. We read every one very, very carefully. You're here because we love this book and we think you're a fantastic author. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much.
Well, what a fantastic discussion with Jim Rollins. My goodness. We just, reading that book and even our discussions afterwards, it makes you want to go research things and know more because you realize there's so many amazing things out there. And I loved what you said at the end. And I want to see if we can go back to that for a second. You were talking about exploration and how that's a hopeful thing. What do you mean by that?
Yes, don't you think? But everything that he had in this book about the ocean floor being so undiscovered, it really led you to realize in the years ago, people were discovering new lands. We went through the many revolutions, industrial revolution in this country, where people were discovering new types of manufacturing and new inventions, and Thomas Edison with the light bulb. And sometimes you sit back and you say, what more is there to be invented? What more is there to be discovered? We've seen it all. Well, James Rollins gave us a lot of hope because he's telling us there's so much we don't even know about yet, people. And it was just astounding. And you know what I wanted to ask you? Because you said something I like too. The finiteness and the simplicity of humankind in comparison to the earth and the universe, that we are not the all-knowing. There's so much that we don't know. We're not the all-solving. And I thought the power that mankind believes he has, but how absolutely trivial it truly is compared to the greatness of the universe. It blows my mind. You could even work in the word God there for some people who want to talk about universe, God, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
It puts things in perspective sometimes when you read a book like this that talks about things that are beyond your five senses, your senses. You agree?
Absolutely. Oh, that was very well put. Especially because sometimes we tend to think that there's kind of been this linear progression where we had, cavemen and lack of sophistication, and now we advance, and here we are at the height of it. But the reality is, first of all, we don't know about what may have come before, and we're starting to understand that there may have been other civilizations or a people group that was very sophisticated. We don't think of them in those terms, but there must have been. Just look at the pyramids, for example. But you're right when you look at how with humility we need to interact with the universe, with the oceans, with the rest of the natural world. It's not about us. It doesn't necessarily revolve around us. This is something that we need to live in harmony with because it might be a little stronger than we are in many respects.
Well,
we can't control these things.
Yeah, in his story, the cause and effect of all things in nature upon humankind causing devastation. We see it all the time. There's fires in Maui right now that are desolating the island, it's blowing our minds. There's tsunamis, there's earthquakes every day. And it just makes you realize how important the care of our earth is. What did James say before we logged on? He said something more specific about if anything happens to a certain percentage of that ocean, we're gone.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. In fact, if there's just a few degree temperature change, we know that changes the ability of algae to grow on coral, which means now we've got coral that is not thriving. And without coral, we don't have a habitat for, 5,000 plus different kinds of fish. Without fish, we can't feed the next, chain, all the way up to those apex predators, the sharks. So it is absolutely astounding when we think about how one impact in that entire chain, as you were talking about earlier, has these life-changing consequences for us and the rest of the natural world. And it really puts it into perspective in a book like this, because we had cataclysmic events that were worsening. And again, it's exciting, it's, entertaining, but it's also, I think, sobering.
Terrifying. How about terrifying? And then also something that James brought up and you brought up to me before the show is that all of these unexplored areas could find a cure for cancer in one of these places. There's so many things we haven't discovered yet, and that's hopeful.
Yeah. Absolutely. And that's why I liked what you said, because for example, we haven't even begun to fully understand, like, the Amazon rainforest. We have creatures and plants and plant uses that we don't even know about yet. First of all, in and of themselves, those creatures and plants have value and beauty, but there's also benefits that they can provide for humankind. We don't even know yet. So that's why we've got to preserve and protect these things, because first of all, we may need them down the road, and we also want to be able to enjoy them and look at them.
Yes. And, okay, so I like this too. Just because we can't explain it, people, doesn't mean it's not real. So whatever it is out there, and especially, I love this idea about these UFOs. I mean, I just love it. And maybe they did land here millions of years ago. And maybe there are secrets to be found somewhere on this earth. I think that is more, I find this all more hopeful than I do terrifying. How about you?
I don't know. I think I might have an equal mix of, as well as, wow, that's pretty cool. Because, as humans, we want answers. We want to know more about things. But sometimes that knowledge comes with, big responsibilities.
And as humans, we want to control everything. And there are a lot of things that are out of our control. But just pick it up. You're going to love it, everybody. Tides of Fire by Jim Rollins. And we're going to leave you with a few storm predictions to pique your interest. We've got a great summer ahead. We have Rebecca Yaros with Fourth Wing, Deneen Milner with One Blood, Jacqueline Machard, A Very Inconvenient Scandal, Michael Ledwidge, The Girl in the Vault, John Mars, The Vacation, and Michael Kortia, An Honest Man.
And listeners, thank you for listening. Thank you for sharing our socials. We continue to grow every week. I think we're in 68 countries. We have listeners in 48 states and, 1,200 plus cities. We're very excited about that. And we just thank you because you're listening, you're contacting us about these amazing authors, and we're having some of the coolest discussions. So stay with us. You can find us on bookstormpodcast.com, on Facebook, on Instagram, on X, formerly known as Twitter, and TikTok. And you can, of course, find us on YouTube. Search for Bookstorm and Podcast, and we should come up and you can see our authors that we bring on board. Until next time, listeners, one of the best ways to brave the storm is to dive down deep with life-changing fiction.